My Hero Academia has exploded in popularity after the massive success of its second season, and with good reason. Studio Bones put their all into making this adaptation fantastic, and manga fans have been hyping up the sports festival ever since the end of season 1. However, I was much more interested in seeing them adapt the arc that came after the sports festival, the field training arc. Ever since I started it in the manga, I knew there was something special about this part of the series because of its main villain, Hero Killer Stain. And by the time I had finished reading it, I was left with this sense of dread about what had just transpired. There's something inherently unsettling about Stain's existence in Hiroaka's world, and I want to take some time to explore who I think, despite his relatively short amount of screen time, is one of the most interesting Shonen Jump villains of this decade. But first, some context for those who need a recap on Hiroaka's world building. Also, there will be some very mild manga spoilers, but by the time you watch this, it should be in the anime anyway, so here we go. In this world, approximately 80% of people are born with a unique ability called a quirk, often allowing them to perform superhuman feats. This has led to the creation of a new profession, heroes. Hiroaka's society is protected not just by the typical law enforcement that exists in our world, but also by the individual contributions of professional heroes. However, unlike the hyper-altruistic, self-sacrificing hero archetype we've come to know over nearly a century of superhero fiction, Hiroaka's superheroes actually get paid directly for the services that they provide. They do the job of public servants, but are actually part of private hero agencies contracted by the government that work to promote the heroes that they employ. As one might expect, this has led many to pursue the path of the hero not just because they have a desire to help others, but also because it provides an opportunity for them to be financially successful. In fact, Season 2 goes on to portray this aspect in a hugely positive light by giving Uraraka the goal of supporting her family financially through her hero work, a genuinely selfless motive. Of course, as exemplified by Mount Lady's introduction in the very first episode, there will always be some heroes that resort to fame hogging and other less than savory tactics in order to promote themselves. Despite that, there's nothing inherently wrong with this system in theory. When a person has a unique skill that they can put to use to benefit society, it's not an unreasonable request for that person to be financially compensated for their services. That's basically how most jobs work. We can't all be shining beacons of hope like All Might who do things solely out of the goodness of our hearts. Some of us simply know what our best skills are and how to effectively put those skills to use for a profit. Yes, this system leaves it open for some to become successful heroes without really being heroic in the traditional sense, but that just makes it like any other career. And this is where Stain comes in, because Stain doesn't believe that a hero should be like any other career. Much like Midoriya and many other characters in the series, Stain was originally inspired by All Might to become a hero, and that image of the perfect hero was permanently etched into his psyche. However, after seeing so many people around him succumb to material motivations and, in his eyes, lose sight of what being a hero is really about, he eventually gave up on becoming a hero himself and instead chose to become a villain whose purpose is to rid the world of quote-unquote fake heroes who pursue heroics for personal gain. In Stain's mind, a person can only be a true hero if they are not motivated by financial compensation for their hero work and are willing to perform self-sacrificing acts for the greater good, aka like All Might. Ironically, Stain's idea of a hero is much closer to the traditional Western superhero than the profession that Hiroaka's world has spawned. Now, they could have tried to justify Stain's actions by throwing a bunch of unscrupulous no-name heroes in our face to show us that the underbelly of the hero system actually is filled with people taking advantage of it, but that would be the easy way out, and it wouldn't make much sense since it would kinda come out of nowhere. Instead, the story chooses to corrupt a pre-existing character that we've already grown to love, Tenya. In his introduction to the series, Stain attacks Tenya's older brother, whom Tenya idolizes as his inspiration for becoming a hero, and Stain injures him so severely that he'll never be able to do hero work again. This causes Tenya to completely lose his cool and go on a revenge mission to take down Stain. When he eventually finds his target in the midst of attacking another hero, he immediately goes on the offensive but gets his ass handed to him. Despite this, Tenya continues to ramble on about Stain's villainy and how he needs to be brought to justice, how he will be the one to take Stain down because he wants to be a hero like his brother. But Stain's response to this is surprisingly brilliant. Rather than try to justify why he attacked Tenya's brother or the other heroes he's killed, he asks why Tenya hasn't made any attempts to save the hero that Stain was attacking in the first place. Tenya has been going on and on about revenge and justice the entire time, and not once did he ever think of saving the person who was actually in danger. Hell, he even leaves the heroes that he was interning with when the Nomu start attacking the city because he sees Stain and wants to go after him. The lives of helpless civilians hardly even cross Tenya's mind because he's so wrapped up in revenge. Tenya is acting out of purely selfish motivations, and Stain judges his actions to be completely unheroic. Even though we know that Tenya is normally a kind-hearted student who really does want to help others, Stain has shown that Tenya's intentions, and thus his actions as well, can be corrupted, and that in Stain's eyes, someone who is this easy to corrupt should never grow up to be a role model for future heroes. This stands in stark contrast to Midoriya's fight with Stain, where he immediately assesses the situation and tries to figure out a way that he can save both Tenya and the other injured hero. Stain recognizes this and actually begins to see Midoriya as someone with the potential to be a true hero. With what I've presented so far, Stain's motivations are easy to understand, but not easy to sympathize with. Yes, there are some people who take advantage of the system for self-serving purposes, and there are even some people who we think would make good heroes yet are corrupted by some kind of negative aspect, but this system of reward through heroics still works on a practical level, and nothing about it has resulted in an inherently bad scenario. Except that it has, and it's the reason why this arc had to be written at the exact moment that it was in the story. Had it been written slightly earlier or slightly later, Stain's motivations would simply be the work of some ideological psychopath completely disconnected from the plot. But because this arc comes directly after the sports festival, Stain's motivations actually start to feel kind of justified. And this is accomplished through the sports festival's focus on Todoroki and the world's number 2 hero, Endeavor. During the sports festival, Todoroki reveals that he is the result of his father choosing a partner with a desirable quirk to have a child with, regardless of how he felt about said partner. In short, selective breeding. It didn't matter who he had a child with as long as both he and his wife passed on their powerful quirks to their child, because having a child with the ability to surpass him is practically the only thing Endeavor wants in his life aside from being a famous hero. Despite being so close to the top, Endeavor could not be less like All Might if he tried. He's arrogant, standoffish, and most importantly, self-centered. He's not a pro-hero because he wants to help the world, but rather because he's an insanely prideful egomaniac that has enough power to back up that ego. Sure, he doesn't waltz around proclaiming how great he is to everyone in sight, but when you get him alone in private conversation, his true motivations come to the surface. All Endeavor wants to do with his life is beat All Might and become known as the world's number 1 hero. An idea that the story smacks you over the head with so hard that it's right in the guy's hero name. And if he can't beat All Might on his own, then he'll settle for the next best thing, raising a child of his own flesh and blood into a hero that can outpace All Might's legacy. Think about that, and I mean really think about that for a moment. The sole reason that Todoroki was even born is because his father wanted someone to carry on his legacy and eventually surpass All Might. Aside from that, Endeavor does not give a flying fuck about anything else, even the emotional welfare of his family. During the sports festival, Todoroki relives his tragic backstory in borderline gruesome detail, describing how his father relentlessly pushed him to become stronger, how horribly his mother was treated, and how this eventually drove his mother insane, causing her to splash boiling water in her own son's face. And, of course, Endeavor's reaction to this is to send her away without a second thought or even a sliver of emotional pain because someone tried to damage his precious heir. This is a hero who has actively hurt the people closest to him in order to get what he desires, and yet despite this, his public actions have allowed him to become the second greatest hero of his era. This perversion of the hero mantle becomes a strangely compelling justification for Stain's existence and presents him as a natural byproduct of the reward-based hero system. Because the memories of Todoroki's upbringing and the threatening intensity of Endeavor are so fresh in our minds, Stain's ideology almost seems like a necessary evil. If someone this selfish and, well, let's call it what it is, evil, can be hoisted so far into the spotlight, then what about the people beneath him? If the number 2 hero is so far below All Might in terms of being a great hero, then what right do any of these other so-called heroes have to do what they do? People like Endeavor are poisoning the well of heroic role models, and according to Stain, these people must be done away with in a manner more extreme than the methods used on actual villains in order to preserve the dignity of being a hero. The fact that Stain believes in his ideals so fervently that he's willing to take on entire squads of pro-heroes at once in order to prove his faith, coupled with the fact that his ideology is disturbingly close to being justified, makes him an absolutely terrifying villain who becomes more and more discomforting to watch the more you're exposed to his ideology. And it doesn't stop there either, because Stain hates villains just as much as he hates heroes, often deriding them for grandstanding and showing off their powers in front of everyone in order to satiate their desires. He tries to kill Shigaraki upon their first meeting because he so intensely dislikes his selfish personality, and he ends up saving Midoriya from one of the Nomus during their big fight, brutally murdering it in the process before doing an about-face and attempting to take on half a dozen pro-heroes, one of them being Endeavor himself. Stain doesn't distinguish between good or evil actions like we normally would, only whether someone is truly self-sacrificing in their heroics. And this purely idealistic motivation is kind of disturbing because A, he actually is taking down villains as well as heroes, and B, he legitimately thinks that this is what's best for society, even though it's not best for himself, staining his image with blood and evil in the process. Even the resolution of this arc leaves a bad taste in your mouth, with Endeavor taking the credit for Midoriya's victory since Midoriya is still an unlicensed hero and can't legally use his quirk against villains yet. The most antagonistic and vile hero of the series gets the fame and glory for the efforts of our main character, the only other person in the series besides All Might whom Stain even considered recognizing as a true hero. Even in his defeat, Stain proves that there are potentially catastrophic holes in the logic of the professional hero system. Stain is a great villain not just because he has interesting motivations or because he's incredibly difficult to defeat, but because he thoroughly exposes to the audience how greedy and malevolent people like Endeavor can manipulate the hero system to fit their own needs rather than the needs of society. So why then do we conclude this arc with the hero system remaining entirely intact without any serious renovations? Stain proved that the system doesn't work as well as it should by a huge margin. So why hasn't it changed? Because Uraraka wants to support her family. Because Todoroki knows that he can use his power to help others. Because Tenya really does want to help people even if his heart isn't in the right place all the time. Because Midoriya, inspired by All Might's legacy, wants to make the world a better place and bring hope to those in need. Because even though a handful of people abuse the system for their own personal gain, there are countless more who can level the playing field and bring legitimate moments of altruism to a world plagued with unfettered psychopaths and criminal masterminds. Because regardless of what they get out of it, if a hero saves the day and inspires others to follow the same path, then they have done their duty as true heroes. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I've been sitting on this script for a while now, and I'm super excited to finally get it out there, so I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. And I already have another Hiroaka video in the works, this time focusing on character designs. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all my latest content. Share this video around with people you think will be interested. Leave a comment below about what you thought and other ideas you'd like me to cover in the future. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.